Ever get the feeling that, like, the whole world runs on the stuff we barely understand?
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about semiconductors,
Right.
those tiny little chips
Yeah.
that power, I mean, literally everything.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
From our phones
Mm-hmm.
to, well, kind of like global power dynamics, right?
No, absolutely.
Today we're diving into South Korea's, like, massive $10 billion gamble
Wow.
to become, like, the semiconductor superpower.
That's a huge bet.
It's like a move straight out of, like, one of those high-stakes poker games, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And China and the U.S. are holding some serious cards, right?
Oh, for sure. They're major players in this game. What's fascinating to me, though, is how South Korea is trying to, like, not just play the game,
Right.
but change the rules. You
Yeah,
know?
interesting.
It's not just about keeping up anymore. It's about taking the lead
Uh-huh.
in a technology that's, I mean, basically like the backbone of the 21st century.
Okay, so, like, for those of us who don't spend all day every day
Yeah.
thinking about silicon wafers and stuff,
Right.
why should we care about this?
Well, think about it this way. Every time you, like, unlock your phone,
Okay.
stream a video, or even, like, drive your car,
Yeah.
you're relying on the power of these semiconductors. They're like the brains behind this whole digital world we live in.
Wow.
And whoever controls the supply of these chips, you know,
Right.
they have a massive advantage.
Okay.
Everything, I mean, for economic growth to, you know, like national security.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to see why this $10 billion investment,
Yeah.
it's not just, like, some random headline, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And South Korea's going all in.
They are. They're going big, like really big. We're talking about building
Yeah.
what they're calling the world's most advanced chip-making hub. It's near Seoul. Like, imagine a city-sized complex
Wow.
dedicated to, like, producing these tiny
Yeah.
but essential, like, components. It's a pretty bold move, especially considering the, you know, the competition they're up against.
Right, speaking of competition, gotta talk about China.
Of course, yeah.
They've been making some, huge moves in tech.
Absolutely.
So how is this affecting, like, companies like Samsung,
Right.
the name that's basically synonymous with, like, high-end electronics?
That's a great question. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
China's not just playing catch-up anymore.
Uh-huh.
They're, like, laser-focused
Yeah.
on specific types of chips,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Oh, okay.
Like, particularly memory chips.
Mm.
And they're already putting a real squeeze on, like, Samsung's profits in that area.
Oh, wow.
They're doing things like, you know, poaching top talent from other companies, investing heavily in R&D, research and development. And,
Yeah.
I mean, basically building a whole ecosystem to, like, support their chip industry, you know?
Wow.
It's a strategy that's really shaking things up. And like I said, this is just the beginning.
So South Korea's got China kind of breathing down their neck.
Yeah.
But then there's also the U.S. factor, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's the situation with U.S. trade policies right now? Is it, like, helping or hindering South Korea's plans?
That's a great question. Honestly, it's like the wild card in this whole thing, you know?
Yeah.
On the one hand, you've got the U.S. Chips and Science Act, right?
Uh-huh.
It's pumping billions of dollars into domestic chip production here in the U.S.
Wow.
And that could benefit companies like Samsung, actually,
Oh, okay.
if they invest in facilities here.
Right.
But then there's also this, like, uncertainty
Yeah.
around how future trade deals and policies will, you know, actually play out. Will the U.S., like, stay open to collaboration?
Right.
Or will it, like, prioritize protecting its own chip industry above all else?
Right.
You know, that's the question that's hanging over South Korea's head
Yeah.
as they, you know, make these big bets.
It's like they're trying to read the minds
Yeah, though.
of, like, two poker players at the same time.
It's a tough spot to be in.
High stakes, indeed. Now, who are the other players in this?
Oh, there are others, definitely.
Are there any, like, underdog stories
Right.
that we should be paying attention to?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
The European Union, for example,
Okay.
they're investing a lot of money right now to become less reliant on Asian chip makers, you know?
Right.
They're focusing on building their own manufacturing capabilities
Okay.
and, you know, really securing their own supply chains.
Makes sense.
Then you have Japan,
Oh, right.
which, you know, they were a traditional powerhouse
Yeah.
in electronics.
Yeah.
They're also looking to kind of reclaim their position
Okay.
in this critical industry, right?
Yeah.
So it really is a global race.
Mm-hmm.
And while the U.S. and China, you know, they might be the loudest voices,
Right.
There are plenty of other players
Okay.
trying to grab a piece of the pie.
So it's not just a two-player game.
Yep.
It's like a whole poker table.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of eyeing each other's chips, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. And, these chips, they're not just about gadgets
Right.
and, all the cool tech stuff.
Right.
They're really the foundation for, like, artificial intelligence, 5G networks, and pretty much every major technological advancement, I think,
Yeah.
that we can expect in the coming years.
Yeah. Wow.
It's huge.
Okay, yeah. I think it's clear now that
Yeah.
these tiny little chips, they pack a huge punch.
Right.
But let's get back to South Korea and their, like, massive move, this $10 billion investment.
Right.
It's got to be more than just, like, throwing money at the problem.
You're right. It's way more than that.
Okay.
They're playing the long game. They're building a whole ecosystem around this.
Interesting.
So this includes funding research and development, attracting top talent,
Yeah.
and even creating, like, specific programs just to support smaller chip companies.
Wow.
Think of it like building a high-tech Silicon Valley in South Korea
Okay, yeah.
with, everything geared towards them becoming the global leader in chip manufacturing.
It's like they're betting the house.
Yeah,
Pretty much on becoming, like, the ultimate chip champion, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But what are, like, the risks involved in a gamble like this?
Right.
What happens if it doesn't pay off?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
The stakes are incredibly high.
Yeah.
If this investment doesn't work out,
Right.
South Korea, they risk, falling behind in the global tech race.
I mean, they could end up with, like, all these really expensive facilities that are just sitting there not being used and a big hit to their economy.
For sure. And I think, too, we can't forget about, like, the geopolitical side of all this, falling behind in, like, the chip race.
Yeah.
It could mean they lose influence on the world stage,
Yeah.
It's a risky move.
Yeah, for sure.
It really is. And I think the risks go even beyond just financial losses,
Oh, okay.
Like, imagine if one country or even just one region, like, controls most of the world's chip production.
Okay.
That'd give them a ton of leverage.
Right.
I mean, they could basically dictate how
Yeah.
fast technology develops
Wow.
and even, like, impact other countries' national security.
It's almost like, what was it, like the oil of the 21st century.
That's a great way to put it.
Whoever controls the chips controls the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just like with oil, this kind of control, it can, like, totally shift the balance of power in ways we can't even predict.
So, okay, let's talk about the chips themselves for a sec.
Sure.
What are we actually talking about here when we say semiconductors? I mean, I know they're tiny and super important, but, like, what's the magic behind them?
Well, the magic is really in the transistors. They're like these microscopic switches, right? And they control the flow of electricity.
Right.
The smaller and more densely you can pack those transistors together, the more powerful and efficient the chip becomes.
So it's like cramming more and more processing power
Exactly.
into something smaller than my fingernail.
Yeah, it's pretty wild when you think about it.
So the size of those transistors, that's crucial then, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
How small are we talking, actually?
We're talking nanometers here.
Nanometer.
A nanometer is like 1/1000th of a meter.
Okay.
To give you some context, a human hair is like 80,000 nanometers wide.
Wow.
And the latest chips, they have transistors that are only a few nanometers wide.
So we're talking like billions of these things packed
Yeah.
onto a single chip.
It's incredible.
That's mind-bogglingly small.
It is.
But why is smaller better in this case?
Right.
Like, what's the advantage of having all those tiny transistors?
Well, smaller transistors mean faster processing speeds
Okay.
because the electrons have less distance to travel, you see.
Yeah.
It also means they use less energy,
Right.
which is great for, mobile devices, battery life, all that.
Makes sense.
And then, of course, you can have more complex functions, more capabilities.
So it's like a win-win-win.
Pretty much,
Yeah.
Smaller is faster, it's more efficient, and more powerful.
But, like, how small can we actually go with this? Is
Right.
there, like, a limit to how much we can miniaturize these things?
That's the challenge, right?
Yeah.
Scientists and engineers, they're bumping up against the physical limits
Mm.
of how small you can make a transistor before you start running into
Okay.
quantum effects.
Quantum effects.
Yeah.
That sounds like something straight out of Star Trek.
It kind of is, right?
Right.
And that's where quantum computing comes into the picture.
Oh, okay. So that's where that comes in.
Yeah, instead of using those traditional transistors, quantum computing, it uses, like, the laws of quantum mechanics, right? to do calculations in a totally different way.
So it's not just about, like, making the existing technology smaller.
Well,
quantum computing is like a whole new game.
exactly. Yeah. It could be huge. It has the potential to solve problems that even the most powerful supercomputers that we have today can't even touch.
Like what?
Like, imagine being able to design, like, life-saving drugs or create new materials or even, like, develop AI that's smarter than humans.
That sounds like science fiction.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually happening right now.
And with South Korea making these big investments, it seems like, this technology is going to shape the world in ways we can't even imagine yet.
That's what's so exciting about it. I mean, we're just scratching the surface here of what's possible with semiconductors,
Right.
And everybody wants to be the one to unlock that full potential.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got South Korea betting big on traditional chips, but also keeping an eye on quantum computing.
Right.
But what does all this mean for, like, the average person? How is this chip race going to affect our lives?
Well, think about the devices you use every day, right?
Okay.
Your phone, your laptop, your car.
Uh-huh.
All of that stuff runs on semiconductors.
Yeah.
As technology keeps advancing, we can expect to see, like, even more sophisticated devices that are more integrated too.
Right.
And all thanks to those tiny chips powering them.
So, like, faster phones, smarter cars, maybe even those, like, holographic displays you see in movies, stuff like that.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just, like, the cool gadgets, Semiconductors are essential for things like healthcare, transportation, energy, all the stuff that keeps our society running.
So it's not just about entertainment.
Yeah.
It's about the essential systems that we all rely on.
Exactly. And that's why this whole chip race, it's so important. Whoever controls production, they have a ton of influence over global innovation, economic growth, even national security.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Okay, so back to South Korea for a minute. They've made this big move.
Yeah.
But what happens next? Like, what are the potential outcomes here?
Yeah, it's like we're on the edge of our seats, right?
Totally.
Will this investment, like, pay off big time?
Right.
And, launch South Korea to the top of the chip pyramid?
Yeah.
Or will they end up with, like, a bunch of silicon and a ton of debt?
Yeah, it's a tough one to call. Predicting the future of technology is always a bit of a guessing game.
Right.
But let's, think about some possible scenarios here.
Okay.
So if South Korea actually pulls this off, they could become, like, the main supplier for the most advanced chips in the world. Imagine, like, them holding the keys to the next generation. Yeah.
Of AI, 5G, all that stuff.
Wow.
I mean, that's a pretty powerful position to be in.
That sounds like a win for South Korea, definitely.
Yeah.
But what about everyone else?
Right.
Would we all end up, like, relying on just one country for something so important?
That's a thing, right?
Yeah.
Too much power concentrated in one place, that can be risky.
Yeah.
It makes everyone else vulnerable,
Right.
Like, what happens if there's, like, a supply chain disruption?
Yeah.
Or the prices go way up.
Right.
Or, they start using it as leverage to, like, pressure other countries.
It's like a balancing act then.
Yeah.
We need the technology to keep advancing, but we also need to make sure the global supply chain is diverse and resilient. Right?
Totally. That's a great way to put it. And that's what makes this whole chip race so fascinating to watch, I think.
Yeah.
It's not just about one country winning. It's about, like, how we shape the future of technology in a way that benefits everybody.
Speaking of shaping the future, you mentioned quantum computing earlier. Is that, like, the next big thing, do you think? Will it make all these silicon chips, like, obsolete?
It's a disruptive technology, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And it has the potential to change, like, a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's necessarily going to replace traditional chips entirely.
Oh, okay.
It's more like they'll work together, I think.
Okay.
Quantum computers, they're really good
Yeah.
at solving these specific kinds of problems
Okay.
that regular computers just can't handle.
Right.
It's like they're specialized tools for tackling, like, the really tough challenges,
Right.
and things like medicine, material science, cryptography, stuff like that.
So we'll have quantum computers for the, like, really complex stuff and traditional chips for everything else.
That's one possibility, yeah.
Okay.
But honestly, we're still in the early stages with both quantum computing and traditional chip development. So
yeah,
there are so many unknowns right now. There's so much potential for breakthroughs.
Yeah, it sounds like
it's a really dynamic field, and it's exciting to be a part of it.
Okay, so no crystal ball predictions, I guess.
Nope.
But it sounds like one thing's for sure.
Yeah.
The future of technology, it's going to be shaped by these chips.
Oh, absolutely.
Either they're made of silicon or something totally new.
And the decisions that are being made right now by governments and companies, I mean, those are going to have huge consequences for years to come.
So as we wrap up our deep dive here today, what's the one big takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
I think the most important thing is to just be aware of the power and potential of these semiconductors.
Okay.
They're not just little components in our gadgets.
Yeah.
You know? They're the building blocks of this digital world we live in. And they're shaping everything from the economy to national security.
It's a good reminder that sometimes, like, the smallest things can have the biggest impact.
Totally.
Well, thanks for taking us on this journey
of course.
into the world of chips.
Yeah.
It's been really eye-opening.
My pleasure. I've enjoyed the conversation.
And to all our listeners out there, we hope this has, like, piqued your interest in this amazing world of semiconductors.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
Keep your eyes on this chip race, because this is a story that's just getting started.
Yeah, it is.
And the stakes, well, they're higher than you might think.